We sort of came to China almost by accident because we were exploring different international venues. And for a variety of reasons, we ended up with China. And I wanted to bring a docudrama to China, and I have to tell you that I knew the most interesting, important, relevant thing I could bring would be Top Secret. I also knew it was the most fraught, that it really was going to be a challenge to do it, and that we would run into all kinds of problems. I was worried about permitting. You have to get a permit from the government. You have to submit the script, translated into Chinese. At the last moment, they asked us to actually film the actors on the stage in LA and submit a video. And so I knew it was a great risk to bring a play about freedom of the press to China. I could have chosen something, you know, we could have done A View from the Bridge, or we could have done, you know, a Neil Simon play, but I couldn't rationalize all of this effort and energy and money and not do something that I felt would really be meaningful to people. So we decided to go with Top Secret. It took us 2 years to actually make this happen. And it was very difficult. There was really no funding for it. Most businesses wouldn't touch it. Corporations wouldn't touch it because it was too, corporations doing business in America weren't interested in being involved because they thought it could be unfavorable with regard to publicity. Foundations weren't really forthcoming either. Actually, USC helped us out, the School of Journalism, thanks to Ernie Wilson. And the State Department, interestingly enough, decided that they would like to help back this. And they gave us an unprecedented amount of money because the State Department grants are usually very, very small. And they were hugely helpful to us. And in fact, when I went there in July, before we were due to come in November, I asked the political affairs officer if he thought that this was really going to happen, or if we were going to get stopped when we were stepping on the airplane. And he said to me, you know, there's enough about this play that is unfavorable to the United States. I think the Chinese are going to love it, or at least leave it alone. And I think that in a way, when I reflect back on it, we were very, very careful. I think we were strategic about it. In our press release was much less explicit than a normal press release would be about Top Secret. We really talked more about the historical significance. We thought we would let the Chinese discover for themselves what this play had to say. We also asked the journalists not to write about us until we were actually on the last leg of the journey in Beijing, and they did honor that, which was great. Nevertheless, we did do advance publicity, and you couldn't hide the fact that this was in fact a play about freedom of the press. So we knew there were a lot of hurdles. I even asked the State Department, because it was 30 days before we were to leave, we had to book our plane tickets. The permits were not in hand, although they were promised. And I said to the State Department, I'm about to put out $25,000 for airfares. If this gets canceled at the last minute, will you cover it? And they said yes. So it was, I can tell you, it was a risky venture. The other thing for me as a producer that was interesting was that, all this aside, I thought to myself, we're going to put out this huge amount of effort to do this play, all this money and time and effort and energy, 2 years worth of time. What if nobody comes? Or what if the audience is just filled with a few expats? And I was very worried about that. And one of the things that was, because we've had a lot of experience, we tour around the United States, and I can tell you, when you go around the United States to universities, in the audience are generally people who look like Jeff and me. They don't look like the young people sitting here. It's the people who love theater, who would go to the theater, you know, normally, you know, people be over 50 who are going to go to the theater. And so I had no idea what to expect. And Jeff had come up with this wonderful idea about involving the students here and about the Weibo idea. We also got advice to go on the translation websites, because the translation websites are are very, very popular. A person in China will volunteer to translate an episode of Friends. They put it up there and then everybody watches it. So there are hundreds of millions of young people who go on these websites. So the first night in Shanghai, when the doors opened, I was like this. I had no idea who was coming. And suddenly, hundreds of young people started streaming through the doors. And I was so happy. Tears were coming down because I thought, this is amazing. And that did not abate. That's exactly the way it was for the entire 3-week trip. Everybody in the audience, I would say 90% of the people were between the ages of 20 and 40. And they got it. And of course, their English was terrific. And they you know, we would poll people, and they said, yeah, we used the translation on the side, but we mostly didn't. The other thing that we did, which we thought was an important thing to do, this play is about freedom of the press and an independent judiciary. It's also subliminally, if you want to talk about soft power and cultural diplomacy, it's about the way Americans approach problems, about the way they react in a crisis situation, the way they take on challenges, the sort of very particular can-do American persona. And this play has a kind of a subtext about that, because when you see Ben Bradlee and you see Katharine Graham and all of these reporters, they're facing an unprecedented situation. They have no idea what's going to happen. They are warned by their lawyer that Ben Bradlee could go to jail for espionage. They are warned by the president of the Post Company that the company could go bankrupt, basically. You know, that they had a big stock offering out there that could be in jeopardy. So they were under tremendous pressure. On the other hand, they had tremendous ambition. And you could see that underlying this was a real faith in the fact that America is essentially a just society where if your case is right, you have a very good, not always obviously, we know that, you have a good chance of winning. And they truly believe that they were right in doing this. So you're actually seeing not just a play about these two principles of the freedom of the press and the independent judiciary, but how Americans are in the best sense of the word. Because really this play, the beauty of the play, and the reason I can watch the play 100 million times, because it's about one of the finest moments in American journalism. And all of these young people absolutely got it. And I got a private note from one of the embassy officials after we left, and he said, you know, we do many, many cultural activities, and we do lots of stuff. He said, but this play really helped us advance important discussions on these subjects. This play really made a difference. And so for us, that was worth everything. It was, you know, we had all kinds of drama that occurred, but in fact, we were in Beijing. We'd arrived, I think our first performance was a Tuesday. Everything was going swimmingly, sold out. Friday night, Allison and I, our intrepid tour manager, who is a American who's a Beijing hand, got a call from the bureaucracy in Beijing telling us that Peking University had overstepped their bounds, that they started selling tickets before the permit. It all sounded trumped up, and it was all of this stuff that the article was about. And they had to stop selling tickets, and they were thinking of canceling everything. We decided not to tell the actors. We didn't even tell Jeff. Allison and I had the weekend from hell. I mean, you don't want to know. We were there from Friday night through about, I guess, we didn't know we were out of the woods till probably Tuesday morning. We finally told Jeff, I think we told you Monday night, because we thought we were pretty okay. Allison fortunately had a couple of mentors in the bureaucracy. She was and we got the embassy involved, but we didn't want to make too many waves, because we knew if we made a lot of waves, they'd shut us off. We had to figure out how to persuade them not to do what we were afraid they were going to do. And we also had to figure out, was this coming from real governmental concern, or because the presenting organization probably didn't pay off a bureaucrat that they should have paid off. And we kind of come to the conclusion, I won't go into the details for a variety of reasons, we think that's probably what happened. They actually kind of made our life hell from there on. After Peking University, which is a 2,200 seat house where it should have been completely sold out, they stopped the sales at 1,200 people. And then at intermission, they sent us a text message saying, you cannot do the post-play discussion. At the end of the play, Allison, without telling me, jumped up on the stage. I mean, this is a play about freedom of the press, and said, the post-play discussion has been canceled. I want to read you the text message from the university. And she read it. And you could hear in the background somebody from the presenting organization saying, turn off those microphones, turn off those microphones. So it was really, I mean, it was an incredible moment. I mean, it was amazing. And Stephanie Ho from the Voice of America was there, and I ran back. I said, Steph, did you get it? Because she was recording everything. And she said, I got it. So I actually have that dramatic moment on audio. And we'll be making some kind of an audio-visual report, probably a 20-minute, and it'll have that on there with Allison. So it was there was drama within it. But the other thing that was great about this is when we embarked on this, we engaged, as you said, Jeff spoke to a number of universities. He interfaced with all kinds of people. We got the American Bar Association involved. We got 6 major universities involved. We had involvement from Chinese television. We actually have a wonderful, they did a story about us the first night, and they were interviewing me, and I was laughing because I was looking at the interview, and I thought, what a dumb interview, what are you doing? And then I remembered that I was kind of not wanting to say anything important. So I started talking about the theater and what a wonderful theater was, but I didn't want to get caught talking about the issues on this television news story. I thought, because it was Chinese, it was a government station. But we had media partners in 2 of the major radio stations. We had Time Out, all the publications like Time Out Beijing and Time Out Shanghai, and all the Chinese publications. So we involved so many different people in the media, on the college and university level, and independent organizations throughout China. And one of the great things that happened is we didn't just come and go. We left something behind. We got involved with Radio Beijing, which is a government-supported, important station. Somehow in our talks with them, because they were going to help us kind of publicize the show, the station manager said to me, could we air your plays? Could we broadcast your plays? I said, absolutely. Well, long story short, they are broadcasting our plays. LA Theater Works has a show that's on NPR stations all over the country. Every week we do a play. We've recorded over 450 plays. All of the great plays in the American canon and some world literature. This has been since 1985. That's why we can do a different show every week, because we have a backlog of plays. And we make about 20 new recordings a year. So she said, well, we want to do it every day. I said, every day? So this is what's happened. We are on Radio Beijing and heard all over China by millions and millions of mostly young Chinese listeners. We have given them 90 plays. Each one is divided into 2 parts. They'll run it at 10 in the morning, part 1, repeat it at night. Act 2 is 10 in the morning the next day. They repeat it at night, and then they go to the next play. And they will repeat all 90 plays once in the year. So we picked plays that we thought would be accessible and that would tell you about every aspect of American life. So there are African American plays, there are hit plays from young playwrights, there's Arthur Miller, there's David Mamet, there's Neil Simon. If you listen to all these 90 plays, you will have a very good idea of American culture. And it was great to be able to leave something like that behind. I don't want to go on and on because I've taken enough time already, but just to say to you, it was a tremendous experience. We are going to go back next year, and my big dilemma now is, what am I going to bring back? What is going to be as powerful as this play? Because it had drama, it had excitement, it had humor, and it said something. And actually, I'm not sure what to bring, and I'm thinking about that. But I want to make sure that you know, that our second act is as good as our first act. So it was. So anyway, that was it. It was very exciting. We're now working on, with folks from USC, going to Moscow with Top Secret. So that should be interesting. Stay tuned. Thank you.